All right, so we're studying taxonomy, okay, and taxonomy is basically the science about how we group things, how we sort living things into different groups and categories. Okay? And I'm going to talk about first in this unit sort of the basics, a little background of taxonomy, and then we'll talk a little bit about species, and then we'll talk about some tools that we use to help in identifying species. So by nature, humans classify things. It helps us sort of understand the world by putting things into different categories. You know, I look out in the courtyard, I see all those things, I know they're trees. We have like a category of things that helps us make sense of the world around us. And so humans have a tendency to categorize things. So that's what taxonomy is. It's science of how we group, how we classify organisms. And classifying things into groups allows us to sort of understand how species are related to each other, why they're similar to each other, why they're different from each other. Okay, so it can give us information about the living world. So, sort of our modern system of classification that we scientists use today started with man. His original name was Carl von Linné, but he changed it to Carolus Linnaeus. Linnaeus is sort of thought of as the father of taxonomy. Kind of like, who do we say was the father of natural selection? Yeah, so he sort of jump-started our modern thinking about classification. And he developed this system that we still use today called binomial nomenclature. Yeah, it's a mouthful. What does it mean? We could break that down. What's the prefix bi? Two. Nomial. Are there any Latin students here?
Here.
So does that look at all familiar? Nomial?
Yes, it does. That's a derivative from the Latin word nomen, which means name.
Right, at the top of your papers, does it say nomen?
Yes.
And that's where you write your name. It
Yep.
means name. Okay? So to name, nomen again, that word that means name, nomenclature, is a system of giving things names. So it's a two-name naming system. In binomial nomenclature, which Linnaeus popularized, every living species gets a two-part name. For example, humans. You know what the scientific name of a human is? Probably have heard it before.
Oh, I know it.
What?
It is like, oh dang it, how it somebody taught me.
Humans' scientific name, binomial name, is Homo sapiens. Means knowing man. And so, every species has a scientific name. So we might call that tree out there in the courtyard, you might just call it a tree. If you know anything else, you might call it a pine tree. It's actually a white pine, that's its common name. But it has a scientific name. The scientific name is Pinus strobus. Okay? There's a birch tree over there. You might just call it a tree, that white one. You might know that it's a birch tree. Scientific name,
Birch's trees.
Betula aparifera.
Oh my god. It's also like Latin God.
Acer saccharum is a sugar maple. I think that's the tree over there. Okay? So all species, so all those names sound like, what did you just say, Bella?
Like Roman gods.
So they are, yeah, those words are words that derive usually from Latin. Linnaeus used Latin as the language of scientific names. And that's why they sound sort of strange when I say Acer Saccharum, Pinus strobus, Homo sapiens. He used Latin for a reason. There's a couple of reasons why Latin would be a good language of choice for giving things these scientific names. First, it's a language that is not spoken anywhere in the world currently.
Sounds bad.
Yeah. So Latin is a language, it's not in current use, really. And so that means it's relatively stable. It doesn't really change much. You know, in languages such as English or German or Italian or Korean, they change. All languages that are currently used are constantly changing. New words come into use. Words change in their meaning. Words stop being used. But Latin is sort of, you could think of it as a set language. And so it doesn't really change very much. Also, because scientists throughout the world, whether they live in the United States or Germany or Vietnam or France, if they're doing research on white pine trees, well, saying a white pine tree in English would be different than it is in Spanish or Chinese or any other language. And so by agreeing on using Latin as the language of scientific names, all scientists, regardless of where they live, regardless of the language they speak, refer to it as Pinus strobus. They agree upon the Latin binomial name for naming species. So scientists throughout the world can use it. It doesn't favor one part of the world over another. So when we say things like a dog, human, pine tree, those are what we would call common names. But often common names can be misleading. Like that or no?
Oh god.
I see it.
Easy to
Yeah?
I see
Not that funny.
Yeah.
You say tomato, I say solanum lycopersicum.
I'm sure I'll get it.
That's the binomial name of a tomato.
Oh, okay.
There's, I say tomato, you say, yeah, okay.
Oh, I get it.
It's really funny though, your taxonomy. So, common names can be misleading. For example, what is that?
Jellyfish.
Is it a fish?
No.
No. Does it taste delicious on toast?
No.
Probably not. So that's a misleading name, calling that a jellyfish. It is neither made of jelly nor is it a fish. What is that?
Seahorse.
Is it a horse?
Yes.
No.
It is? Really glad.
Sounds like it.
No,
The
it's not a
horse of
horse.
the sea
Had
looks
looks like it.
size of it.
What is it?
The horse of the sea.
Seahorse.
Well, what is it?
Fish.
Shrimp.
Yes. What is a jellyfish?
An invertebrate.
It is an invertebrate. It's in the area.
I'm so smart.
Ringworm.
What is that?
Ringworm is a common, well, fairly common skin infection,
Oh, ew.
but it is not a worm at all. It's actually caused by a fungus. The starfish, is it a fish?
No.
No. It's another invertebrate. It's an echinoderm. So those common names could be misleading. You guys ever seen the Roadrunner cartoons?
C.
So at the very beginning of those, in like the title sequence, they're like chasing each other. Well, I guess the coyote's chasing Roadrunner. They're chasing each other, and then they like stop it and freeze frame it. If you ever watch closely, and then below it, what do they put?
Coyote.
What?
Coyote.
Coyote.
They put a fake scientific name actually. Okay. For example, Accelerati incredibus is one that's been used before for Roadrunner. So it's kind of a joke. It's not the actual scientific name. The actual scientific name of a Roadrunner is Geococcus californis.
Oh.
Okay? But they give it these fake names, they make them look Latinish. Okay? And it's kind of a joke. A coyote is actually Canis latrans. Okay? But they give it the name Idiospermia. They change them all the time. And so those are jokes that they look like a scientific name, they sound Latin, and so next time you're watching one of those cartoons, check it out and you'll recognize it.
Why did they do
So when we classify species and organisms, we have a whole system of classification that starts with very, very broad, very general groupings, and as we go down the taxon, they get more and more specific. Okay? And you'll understand what this means in a minute here. So the very top level of classification that's currently used is called a domain. There are 3 domains of living organisms in taxonomy. Only 3. Every single living organism, from a bacteria to a fungus, to a tree, to a human, is in one of the 3 domains. But these are huge general categories, and things in the same domain may be quite different from each other. For example, you are in the same domain as a mushroom. And this birch tree over there. So these are really broad categories. Do you have anything in common with a fungus or a birch tree?
No.
Nothing?
Well, maybe.
Well, you must have something if you're in the same domain as them. But there are these very general characteristics which we'll eventually talk about. The next level down from domain is one that I'm sure you've heard of. Okay? If you've learned anything about taxonomy in the past, you may have learned that there are 5 kingdoms. It's actually not 5, but that's what you may have learned before. So the next level is kingdom. And you're familiar with some of these.
It's hard.
So, for example, plants is a kingdom. Jackson's over here. Animals is a kingdom. Fungus is a kingdom. Okay, and so forth. All right, as we get more specific, so as we go down this list, thank you, we are getting more specific, and the number of organisms in each group is decreasing. Below kingdom, we have phylum. Okay, and I'm just going to list them because we'll talk more about them in a minute. Then we have class, order, family, the last 2, genus. Again, that's not genius, not like me, but genus. There's no I in there. And the final, last group is a species. So if we look at these arrows, what this is telling you is that we have 2 organisms and they're in the same genus, okay, they're pretty closely related. So as we move down these taxonomic groups, things become more and more related. And there's fewer organisms in each group. 2 organisms in the same phylum are not as closely related as 2 things that are in the same genus. So this might help you to understand that a little better. This doesn't include domain, but it starts at domain. So all of those organisms that you see at the top, the grizzly bear, the black bear, the panda, the fox, the squirrel, snake, and the sea star, they all are in the same kingdom, the animal kingdom. They're all animals. If we move down the level of taxonomic classification into phylum, okay, phylum Chordata, these organisms are in the same phylum Chordata. What's not there any longer? The starfish. Phylum Chordata are the animals with a spinal cord. A sea star is an invertebrate. So phylum Chordata. We go down another step to class. Class Mammalia. Obviously what? Mammals. What's no longer there? Snake. That would be in class Reptilia. So as we're moving down, these organisms are becoming more and more similar to each other. And there's fewer and fewer in each group. Okay, order Carnivora.
Carnivores.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so the order is called Carnivora. It's more about their teeth than it is about their diet. Okay? We go down another to family, Ursidae. This is the family includes all what?
Bears.
Bears. And you know your constellations?
Ursus.
And you know what the Big Dipper is?
It is.
What's it called?
Big Dipper.
There are also other names for them.
Ursus.
Ursus.
Ursus
Major.
Maximus.
Yeah, the big bear is another name for it. Family Ursidae, the bear family. Okay, so we have the panda, we have the black bear, and the grizzly bear. If we go even further into genus, now we're getting very, very closely related. We have the grizzly bear and the black bear. The panda is in a separate group. And finally, we get down to the species where we just have one organism left, okay, and that is the grizzly bear, Ursus arctos. That's its scientific name. All right, so you're going to have to remember the taxonomic groups in order. So we have a couple ways to help you to do that. Okay? So we have some mnemonic devices some people use. There's like, this is the classic one. People probably learned this one for a long time. Dear King Philip came over for Greek soup. First letter of each word stands for one of the taxonomic groups. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. The next one is maybe more memorable, a little less politically correct. It's kind of morbid, but dumb kids play catch on freeway, go splat. Whatever one works for you. You can come up with your own if you want.
Wait, should we write these down?
Yeah, write those down. So if you ask an 8th or 9th grader in this school to list the levels of taxonomic classification, my guess is most of them could do it. And most of them can do it because they remembered based on this little video here.
Is it a song again?
It is a song. But this is like a group of students that did this.
Show us this.
No, I didn't show you guys yet. You may have heard it from the other 7th grade class. They already did this. So,
The teacher's gonna sing it.
nope. She's not a teacher. She's a student.
Okay. In Mr. D class, we learned King Philip came over for good spaghetti. But we gonna do it a different way, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Kingdom, phylum,
All right.
order, family, genus, species.
What is it?
Yeah, I did that at Mr. Arcuri's wedding, by the way. I'm not joking either. All right, so any way that you can use to remember those classification groups, it's up to you what you use. So let's list them out here. Now, you notice they didn't use which one in that video? They didn't use domain. So sometimes, domain is sort of that top level grouping. It's relatively new in terms of scientists started using domain much later than they started using all of the others, kingdom down to species. And so sometimes some people don't include it, don't teach it, or only teach it at a higher level. We are going to use it. So domain is in there. So if you remember the song, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Remember, you got domain on top there. Don't leave it out. So, what are our what's our top level? Domain. Raise your hand and tell me, what comes next? Gabe, raise your hand. Then I'll call your name. Then you can tell me the answer. What, Gabe?
Kingdom.
Kingdom. Julia?
Phylum.
Phylum. Okay?
Class.
Class. Karina?
Order.
Order. Evan?
Family.
Family. Jackson? Genus. And finally, Matt? Species. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So where do humans fit into it? Let's look at our own sort of classifications. So our domain, the domain that humans belong in is a domain called eukarya. We'll learn more about what that means.
Isn't it on the front page?
Yeah. Has to do with the cells, has to do with whether or not the genetic materials surrounded by a nuclear membrane. What kingdom do we belong in? Animal kingdom.
How many kingdoms are there?
6. How about phylum? So, within, what types of animals are there and where would we belong?
Family.
Almost, but above that, something more general. What makes us different from a mosquito or a jellyfish?
We're bigger.
They're both animals,
We're bigger.
not size.
Is it?
Nope, not yet.
Is it like something through like our spinal cord?
Yes.
Oh.
Vertebrates are chordates. Now, within the vertebrates, where do we belong?
Mammal.
Mammals, correct. From here on out, you probably, well, maybe you know the next one. Next one is a type of mammal that humans are in. No, no,
Oh, it's not on
no. So it doesn't have to do with diet. Carnivora is more about canine teeth. So it's just a so this also includes apes, monkeys. You know what you call those?
Apes.
Primates.
It does start with P what?
Primates.
Primates, correct, good.
Apes.
Yeah, they're primates. And then we have the groups in which humans are the only living species. Okay, family Hominidae, genus Homo, species Sapiens. And that's, so the binomial name of an organism comes from its genus is the first word, its species is the second word. So humans are Homo sapiens. Okay? Pinus strobus. Pinus is the genus for all pines. Strobus is the species for the white pine. All right, now when we write names in binomial nomenclature, we have a couple rules that we follow. So when you look, panda bear is Ailuropoda melanoluca. The polar bear, Ursus maritimus. The grizzly bear is Ursus arctos. What do you notice about how they're written, those binomial names? Just a couple things to take note of. Julia?
They're in a different font.
Yeah, they are in italics. If you're using computers on you type them in italics. But if you're writing them by hand, you can also underline it instead. What else do you notice? Dave?
For like, polar bear and grizzly bear, both of them have Ursus.
Yeah, that is
It's the
true.
same genus.
They are in the same genus, correct. How about for writing it? Anyone notice anything with capitalization?
Oh, yeah.
Evan?
The first word is always
The genus is capitalized, the species part is not. Those are the rules. Hey, which two of these bears are most closely related? And how do you know this? Yes, they're in the same genus. They're both in genus Ursus. So, when we write a scientific name, it's the genus and the species. The first letter of genus is capitalized. Everything else is lowercaseified. about all the time we're gonna have for today. Tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about species and hybrids and using a dichotomous key.